Member for Brisbane.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Look, I rise in support of the bill, which, while it doesn't have a very exciting name, it actually does so many positive things for many businesses and individuals in this country by improving the efficiency of government and cutting unnecessary red tape and costs to the Australian taxpayer. The bill is a whole-of-government initiative to amend or repeal of the legislation process across 7 portfolios. The bill brings forward measures to reduce the regulatory burden for businesses, individuals and the community sector that are a subject of an individual stand-alone bill. As the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Mr Porter, said in his second reading speech, this bill will amend or repeal 14 acts across portfolios, some of which are spent and redundant or have remained on the Commonwealth statute books long beyond the date of fulfilling their purpose. Other acts being amended or repealed have provisions that have been superseded by other legislation years ago. Deputy Speaker, the bill also makes a number of amendments to legislation to reduce the complexity and to reduce compliance costs. Deputy Speaker, it is often all too legitimate criticism that this government is too bureaucratic and that any government is too bureaucratic and inefficient. In terms of what it means for the business community, I quite often hear much comment from the 30,000 businesses that I represent, and also coming from a small business background myself, I hear their lament, and often they say to me, if only government could operate more like business, or the more pointed criticism that if we ran our business the way government operates, that we wouldn't have a business, we'd all go broke. Well, there are some, regrettably, Deputy Speaker, often what happens is that those opposite, when they do get into government, they do send the country broke, and it's up to us to clean up their mess. And that's exactly what this bill is about. It's about cleaning up the mess. Deputy Speaker, the Coalition's goal is to make life easier for Australians, to make it easier for businesses to invest, easier for them to create jobs and to employ people and to grow the economy. And cutting red tape is about Australians spending less time in queues, less time filling out forms, less time searching for information, and also less time dealing with the duplication and the myriad of forms across different departments. And many businesses continually tell me that they're filling out the same information but in a different format when they're asked by different government departments. Look, under the former Labor government, the Commonwealth regulation was costing Australians approximately $65 billion. That is a staggering amount of money. It is a staggering 4.2% of GDP. The Coalition set itself a target to reduce the regulatory burden by $1 billion a year. Now, not only do we do that, we doubled that target in our first year, and we're on our way now to meeting a fresh $1 billion target for 2015. On the government's third repeal day, which was back on the 18th of March this year, we made decisions to decrease the $65 billion regulatory burden by $2.5 billion. And to date, we've implemented $1.57 billion of that $2.45 billion, with an $880 million, I should say, to be implemented. And I want to thank the Assistant Minister, who's the member for Kooyong, for all of the fantastic work that he did in that process. Now that's $2.5 billion in savings from cutting red tape, which is equal to every man, woman and child in this country putting $100 back into the national piggy bank. What is more concerning, Deputy Speaker, is that this whole process is the first time in Australian history that this has happened, that a Commonwealth government has undertaken a thorough and an accurate stock take of all of those federal regulatory costs and consistently measuring and reducing the cost of Commonwealth government red tape on Australian businesses, organisations, families and individuals. And as a result, Australia now has the most precise, comprehensive and transparent program to reverse the growing costs of red tape on the Australian economy. It's now more than a year since we started this concerted plan to reduce the regulatory burden on our society, because we recognise that far too long Australians have suffered from poorly designed and excessive regulation. There are 6 areas that I want to particularly focus on today that we are streamlining and cutting red tape in, and that's the business, the education, the health, the building and construction, and individuals and also students. In the business sector, some of the key measures was implementing a much easier monthly pay-as-you-go for certain businesses. Businesses choosing this method would now only need to calculate their actual instalment income on a quarterly basis. So annual compliance savings there of 2.7 million. We've also improved the ATO website so that 6 million Australians can find relevant information more quickly, and again that's resulted in an annual compliance saving cost of $48.5 million. Other measures announced in the first year of cutting red tape included repealing the carbon and mining taxes, making other changes to the entry thresholds for pay-as-you-go instalments, expanding private sector access to the government's document verification service, and that resulted in a net red tape savings of $194.4 million. And we introduced a one-stop shop for environmental approvals, resulting in a net red tape saving of a staggering $426.3 million. In the educational sector, we've developed an online national assessment platform which will deliver the National Assessment Program, Literacy and Numeracy NAPLAN online, and that's scheduled to be available from 2017, which will deliver an annual compliance saving of $9.7 million. There are so many other good stories happening, particularly in the health area. The streamlined grant administration process for the National Health and Medical Research Council, and a range of other changes resulting in a net red tape saving of more than $150 million. And this will be very welcome news to the medical research institutes that are based in my electorate, and those particularly in Brisbane, at QUT, at the University of Queensland, and the Queensland Institute of Medical Research, and many, many other research bodies. In the building and construction area, we've removed the costly and time-consuming requirement for builders to be certified to Australian standards, AS 4801 or equivalent, prior to applying for scheme accreditation. So unaccredited builders will now have the opportunity to undertake government-funded building work where they're in a joint venture with an accredited company, and they can operate under the partners scheme accredited system. So that will be very welcomed relief to many in the construction industry. Individuals, we've implemented additional functionality for MyGov users to allow customers to update their detail in one place using the MyGov Tell Us Once service to obtain secure and convenient access to online services with a single account and one set of credentials. Again, that has saved an enormous amount of money, $5.4 million. We've made identity checks easier for those many hundreds of thousands of people who are working in the retail sectors and consumers when they purchase a new prepaid mobile phone, and that's delivered annual compliance saving costs of $6.2 million. The MyTax initiative reduces the amount of information 1.4 million users need to supply to the ATO when they fill out their e-tax form every year, and that's resulted in savings of red tape savings of $156 million. The government's making it easier for Australians to access government services. The changes will see Centrelink claimants able to check the status of their claims online. That'll reduce the need to spend many minutes wasted in direct follow-up intervention by phone or having to go in person at the Centrelink Service Centre. Students will be able to upload their course selections. And again, they can make some very flexible changes. They can do that in their own time and whatever time they want to do that. So students who receive government payments are now eligible to change those details online. It'll be very, very useful for those who are studying and receiving things like youth allowance. They will be required to contact no longer a call centre or attend a call centre. They can just go online, and that will reduce the annual compliance savings by 2.7 million. Deputy Speaker, in undertaking this thorough and consistent stocktake of all Commonwealth regulatory costs, the government's developed a map of the Commonwealth regulatory environment. And what's surprising is that this is the first time in Australian history that a Commonwealth government has undertaken a thorough and accurate stocktake. And it is a stocktake. It's a stocktake of all federal regulatory costs and is consistently measuring and reducing the cost of Commonwealth red tape on Australian businesses, organisations, families and individuals. What is equally surprising is that one of the few times that any country in the world has engaged in this rigorous and consistent process that allows for an absolutely accurate assessment of the total cost a national government imposes on the economy. Deputy Speaker, the benefits of having an accurate measure of Commonwealth regulation is obvious in the now, and as I say, very important for ministers, department secretaries, regulators, policy officers. They'll be able to get a detailed picture of what regulations the Commonwealth has instituted through primary legislation, subordinate instruments and quasi-regulations. Thanks to this process being undertaken by the Coalition, Australia now has the most precise, comprehensive and transparent program to reverse the growing cost of red tape on the economy. It provides an opportunity for the government to learn how to work more positively with business, community organisations and the many other individuals. This has been very important and highly beneficial, and reducing red tape is not just about what we do within our own borders, Deputy Speaker. It's also about other countries, it's about potential investors, it's about importers, and it's also about how we're perceived in terms of the ease of business and doing business in this country and how easy it is for overseas investors. An unacceptable fact is that according to the World Economic Forum's Global Competitive Index, Australia's competitiveness has declined during the course of the last decade. In 2013-14, the Australian economy was ranked 21st out of 148 economies, with the perception of those being surveyed being that Australia was well behind in terms of global best practice when it came to the burden of government regulation. This is not a dynamic, Deputy Speaker, that this country can afford to have continue. And that's exactly what Prime Minister Turnbull is talking about when he says the Australia of the future has to be a nation that is agile, that is innovative and that is creative. We cannot achieve that outcome if our spirit of innovation is strangled by red tape. Deputy Speaker, this will be an ongoing process that the Turnbull government's committed to, reducing the regulatory burden for all Australians. We understand that in order to build a prosperous country, we must relieve this burden of red tape on business, community organisations, families and individuals. We must allow people and businesses to do what they do best without spending endless hours dealing with paperwork, waiting in queues, searching for information. They should be concentrating on market development, product development, staff development. But much more importantly, it's important that businesses, community organisations and others in my electorate of Brisbane contact me to see how we can reduce even more red tape so that we can continue to build a prosperous and productive economy for the benefit of all Australians. To this, Deputy Speaker, I want to highlight the fact that the Australian Government's annual deregulation report 2014 and the Australian Government Autumn Repeal Day 2015 overview can be downloaded on www.cuttingredtape.gov.au. Deputy Speaker, this is a much welcome bill. It will make a huge difference to the many thousands of businesses, families and individuals in the electorate of Brisbane, and I welcome it.